I have a dream.
That 250,000 people were there of all colors. It said we are tired of discrimination and racism, and we want some changes now.
Little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers.
He showed us there are people and a culture worth fighting for.
But one day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creeds. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
MLK Celebrating the Legacy is brought to you by and by viewers like you. Thank you.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream message was seismic when it comes to its significance in the history of America. He capsulized in that particular message, and I like to call it a message instead of a speech. He capsulized where America had been, where it was at the time, and where it should go when it comes to living out the principles in its Constitution, in the preamble, in the Pledge of Allegiance. So it was seismic, it was extremely significant. And so we were in the middle of the Civil Rights Movement. We were working on legislation, Voters' Rights Act, the Civil Rights Acts, and other things. Segregation was still legal in many states in America. And so for African Americans, the March on Washington and Dr. King's speech, as well as others, and the fact that 250,000 people were there of all colors, it said we are tired of discrimination and racism, and we want some changes now. And so Dr. King capsulized the dream, the vision, in his words. That's why it is extremely important to keep his legacy alive and to continue to fulfill the dream that he spoke in August of 1963.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
The I Have a Dream speech is probably the most recognized rhetorical exercise, both for those inside education and outside. And part of that is because it's so rhetorically inspiring, but also it's a great kind of demonstration of Dr. King's orality skills. But it's also important because it recognizes a kind of oral tradition among Black, Southern, especially church folks, who would recognize this rhythm and be roused by it. The intonations, the ups and downs, the roller coasters, and I think that is one part of it. But the philosophical part of that has an influence is this notion that we can be better and that we have to do better in terms of Black-white race relations in this country. What one learns from this speech, that the first part was actually written in a way that was supposed to sort of capture what the meaning of coming together on the 100-year anniversary of the emancipation and having 200,000 people there. And he was the last person to speak in a line of 10 people. And so people already heard 9 other people speaking, and so he had to do something that was more than coming with a prepared statement. So toward the end of this, which is where people sort of grasp, is the I have a dream moment, and he starts to sort of extemporaneously talk, and that's what got people excited.
One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
As I reflect upon Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, his speech at that time really legitimized the struggle. It legitimized it for the African American community, and it also brought visibility, brought it to the forefront for our white brothers and sisters who had never given it a second thought about what our struggle was. So, and still is, our struggle still is the same. And so he gave it voice, he gave it credibility, he gave it validity, and he gave it visibility. And so the impact on our community, it helped us to finally say, we're being heard. Now people see, and because this was not only seen here in the United States, but it was seen across the world, people got a chance to see what our struggles were and still are here in America. So that's what it meant to me.
I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Well, I think to hear Dr. King talk so eloquently about his aspirations, not only for his children, but for all of us as well, the fact that he talked about he was there to cash in a check, an unfulfilled check from the American people to their African American folk, I thought was incredibly moving. And I think the fact that once you got through the speech and really began to let it all sink in, what really stayed with me was the audacity of his aspiration, the fact that we in fact could achieve that more perfect union that the Founding Fathers talked about. Of course, they didn't have us in mind necessarily when they did it. But I thought the most important thing was that fact that I think Dr. King talked about. His goal was not to free black people or brown people, but to free all people. And that's the thing that I think at the end of the day, beyond anything else, was most significant to me, because I always thought about Dr. King as being something that we owned as the black community. But I recognized that it was far greater than that. His vision was far deeper than that, far richer than that. And I think that's what the country has really come to appreciate.
So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom
Well, my sense of the speech was I was, I think, 15 when I heard the speech given live. I wished I could have been there. But I was moved beyond anything I could ever express. The idea that his dream so closely coincided with all the hopes and aspirations that my folks were raising us with. I made the decision then and there that at some point, I either wanted to figure out how to talk to Dr. King, which I wasn't going to do, or I had to figure out how to find a degree of public service somewhere that could give me the opportunity to kind of fulfill what I think was everybody's obligation. The one thing I believe, and I think King inspired in me, was that change is a participatory event. And that's when I really, I think, committed myself to try to find something in the public sphere that I could do. Never thought I'd run for the legislature, but I did, and the folks were kind enough to leave me there for a while.
50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice.
Oh, I remember it just as clear as today. I was 11 years old. I was in my grandparents' living room where we had one black and white TV, And we were all sitting there watching him talk about us and talk about what America should be. And perhaps that is where the seed was planted for me to be what I call a Jesus and justice fighter. Perhaps even that caused me to have the motivation several decades later to help lead the Martin Luther King Jr. fight here in the state of Arizona to win the King holiday. I did not go to segregated schools, but I also knew racism. I knew that as a child. I mean, I couldn't go in the front of some restaurants. I had to sit in the balcony in the theater in our town in Kansas. So I knew about racism. So that's why it was so significant to me at 11 years of age.
I am from Phoenix. And so when Dr. King was leading marches and was in the news, people characterized that as that's over there. Civil rights in Phoenix was a very roundabout and very hushed type of a thing. And so in my 10-year-old mind, when this happened, all of the people in Washington, it was an enormous event. It was the first time you saw so many Black people together asserting themselves and getting supported in that assertion by a number of white people. And so it was a very, very important occasion.
When I think of the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. King, I really think about the points of America saying it's past time we work together. And then also a major point in that speech, again, is going that higher route. People would want us to react in a negative way as a Black culture, but I think the speech really, he talks about going a higher route and doing peaceful protests. And another good aspect about the I Have a Dream speech is the message of unity. It's all about us working together to lift each other up. I think that's a really big message about the I Have a Dream speech, is the message of unity, and that it's never going to be easy. The fight for diversity, the fight for inclusion is never going to be an easy struggle, but it's one worth fighting for us as a Black culture, and it's worth fighting for us to grow and have an impact on this world.
There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality.
But very much like Dr. Martin Luther King said at the time, that 1963 speech was the start. Some people say, well, when is it going to be enough? And he says in the speech, it's going to be enough when police brutality, that the horrors of it doesn't impose itself and be what we see currently today. I grew up being very aware of civil rights movement, so I always aspired as a young girl to be a part of economic justice, social justice, and hence being now the president of NAACP. And my close family ties is I'm a mother as well, and I have a daughter that was born on April 4th, so which is actually the murder of Martin Luther King. So in birthing her, I thought a lot about birthing the next generation of civil rights leaders.
I was impressed because that was in the 60s, early 60s, and to see an African-American man get up and speak to the world and speak to the nation about what was going on. And all he was saying was that the Negroes, and I'll say Negroes, wanted a place at the table. Nothing more, nothing less, not to become dominant, but to give us the respect and the honor that we were due. And it was a first, from what I understand, of him in front of the masses of people, Black, white, brown, clergy, just thousands of people, as my memory takes me back to that reflective pond. The boldness of how he spoke, the assuredness of how he spoke rang volumes. Deep-voiced individual as he was, gifted, but the message that he resonated for not only of those thousands that were there, but for everybody all over the world, the message.
When we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
This nation has made remarkable progress since Dr. King's I Have a Dream message. However, systemic racism is America's original sin. And until the white power structure confesses of systemic racism, repents of it, reconciles with all people of color, and move toward restoration of all of the inequities that the white power structure over the last 400 years has put upon people of color, and commit to change it, we will continue to suffer from systemic racism like we do in 2021. One thing that Arizona has going for it, we are the first and only state to approve a Martin Luther King Jr. state holiday by a vote of the people, in a state where at that time the African American population was about 3.5%. And so we were called the New Alabama. But after we won, we became the Arizona that did what no other state did, because people of all races and colors, religions, persuasions, perspectives came together for victory together. And we won the King holiday November the 3rd, 1992.
I think that if we can try to live out his dreams as we are around others, be it economically, jobs, nurturing, give a smile, a kind word that doesn't cost you nothing, help somebody when they're down if you can, give them a hand up. Be thy brothers and sisters' keeper. Those are small things that you don't need organizations or groups for. You can impact one or two individuals on your own. Just try to make your life and someone else's life a lot better in the memory of a peacemaker, a dream maker, who spoke and gave his life for all the people.
I think what I'd like to mention with respect to Dr. King, I love his saying of the fierce urgency of now. We can no longer sit back and say, well, the system, it takes time. No, we've taken too much time. We don't have that anymore. We're in the now. We're living in the now. How are we going to respond? Response is key. I'm challenging racism in one way or another. That's called anti-racism. People don't know what it means. I said it means you actively challenging racism when you see it. When you see people being belittled because of the color of their skin. When you see people being blocked from opportunities because of the color of their skin. When you see black boys and girls being pushed out of school at a higher rate than anybody else, we can lead the nation in anti-racism work and challenge these systems, and we can do things with decency and respect. You do not have to tear anyone down, and you don't have to be against anybody to be for someone else.
I'm the creative director of Emancipation Arts, and what we focus on is raising the profile of black artists in Arizona. The arts are so extremely important, and if you drive around this city, I want you to count for me how many images you find that are related to black people. We have been completely excluded from public art. So it's like we have no footprint here. Art is one of the most seminal ways of leaving a footprint. Currently, there's nothing in the public art of Phoenix that a black child can look at and say, I see myself, I belong here, I'm comfortable here, I'm accepted here, I'm included here.
I think we're still at the same point where Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, now's the time. So the work of East Valley NAACP and our mission is to ensure economic justice, to ensure that we're socially responsible and that social justice is important. Environmental justice, which is often forgotten in the era where we look at police brutality, environmental justice continues to be very important. So the work that we do is holistic. It's about justice and equality in every aspect of life. Because this is a time that we ask people to come together, unite, and it's an era of trusting and adjusting when there's so much uncertainty. And let's take this opportunity to make the world a better place.